boldly going where no man has ever gone before, beyond the textbook.
Don't necessarily might not remember me. I like it here. It doesn't mean because I go here I'm a genius. I am very smart. Hey, how's it going? How are you?
How you doing? I don't know. What class did you say that was?
History. Yeah.
Just history? It must have been a survey course then, huh?
Yeah, it was. It was surveys.
Right.
You should check it out. It's a good course. It's going to be a good class.
How'd you like that course?
Frankly, I found the class, rather elementary.
Elementary. I don't doubt that it was.
Yeah.
I remember that class. It was just between recess and lunch.
Why don't you go away?
Why don't you relax?
Go away.
I'm just having fun with my new friend, that's all.
But we could have a problem?
No, there's no problem here. I was just hoping you might give me some insight into the evolution of the market economy in the southern colonies. My contention is that prior to the Revolutionary War, the economic modalities, especially in the southern colonies, could most aptly be characterized as agrarian free capital.
All right, of course that's it.
Hang on a second.
You're a first-year grad student. You just got finished reading some Marxian historian, Pete Garrison, probably. You're going to be convinced of that till next month when you get to James Lemon. Then you're going to be talking about how the economies of Virginia and Pennsylvania were entrepreneurial and capitalist way back in 1740. That's going to last until next year. You're going to be in here regurgitating Gordon Wood, talking about, the pre-revolutionary utopia and the capital forming effects of military mobilization.
As a matter of fact, I won't, because Wood drastically underestimates the impact of social...
Wood drastically underestimates the impact of social distinctions predicated upon wealth, especially inherited wealth. You got that from Vickers. Work in Essex County, page 98, right? Yeah, I read that too. Were you going to plagiarize the whole thing for us? Do you have any thoughts of your own on this matter? Or is that your thing? You come into a bar, you read some obscure passage, and then pretend you pawn it off as your own idea just to impress some girls, embarrass my friend? See, the sad thing about a guy like you is in 50 years you're going to start doing some thinking on your own, and you're going to come up with the fact that there are two certainties in life. One, don't do that. And two, you dropped 150 grand on a fucking education you could have got for $1.50 in late charges at the public library.
We decided to show you this clip from Good Will Hunting because it illustrates how someone can read and memorize a textbook without really learning the information or having an independent thought about it. We also just thought it was kind of funny.
Johnson believes that textbooks, starting in elementary school, are becoming harder to read. He identifies 8 key reasons that are: reading levels are increasing, sentences are too long, the use of words that have multiple definitions, too much content is covered, new materials added to familiar material without explanation, the use of unfamiliar associated contents, the need for material not in the text, and the lack of use of primary sources. As students are being pushed to read and understand more content, many students not only struggle with what the textbook is about, but how to read it. Textbooks hold a great deal of information, but they are useless if students are having difficulty decoding the text. A 1994 study by Tyree, Harrour, and Cook asserts that textbooks are not for the below-average reader or even the average reader, but they're written for the above-average reader. Many students have trouble with the unfamiliar sentence structure and content in textbooks, as well as the structure of the ideas presented. The transitions used may make textbooks more accessible for adult readers, but for student readers, it's a very unfamiliar setup. Biano is a 5th grade teacher, and she begins all of her units with a nonfiction literature example, and then moves to the textbook. She found that when her students had a highly accessible source for previous knowledge, such as a children's book or a poem, they were more likely to correctly explain the text in their own words. Biano believes that textbooks will always have a place in the classroom, but this role should be as a guide to the curriculum, not the cornerstone of the curriculum itself.
There are several reasons that accessible texts need to be used in the classroom. We all know that textbooks are boring, but here are some notable reasons that accessible texts are better. First, most of the time these texts are of high interest, something textbooks cannot offer. They are also more pleasant to the eye and easier to read than textbooks. They help students make connections between school subjects and the real world. Laura Johnson of Evanston High School says that students need the creative experience of combining old and new so that they can produce an extended meaning. They give students a way to explore themes using a more familiar text. These texts can be a variety of reading levels, making them useful for the below-average reader and even the above-average one. Most of all, getting students to read more accessible text will get them to read more, and in effect, help them become overall better readers.
A great alternative to textbooks in social studies is primary sources. Websites like rdocuments.gov have scanned replicas of many documents such as Marbury v. Madison, the Treaty of Ghent, and the Declaration of Independence. Let's take a look at that last one. In the McDougall-Little World History textbook, the Declaration of Independence is described as follows. This document, written by Thomas Jefferson, was firmly based on the ideas of John Locke and the Enlightenment. The Declaration reflected these ideas in its eloquent argument for natural rights. The Declaration of Independence included a long list of George III's abuses and ended by breaking the ties between the colonies and Britain. That sounds kind of boring. But what about when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. That sounds pretty intense. By reading the colonists' exact words, you can feel the emotion behind them. Primary sources not only paint a more solid picture, but they also make the subject come alive.
So now you may be thinking, how do I get students to read these more accessible texts? Well, here's a quick guide for you. First, you have to develop a classroom library. How do I do that, you may ask? Here are some steps that should get you started. First, you need to select a series of more interesting texts that will be used instead of the textbook. These texts should relate somehow to the content you are covering, but be more interesting and of a lower reading level. These texts can be any kind of reading material. Newspapers, fiction and nonfiction books, reference books, magazines, song lyrics, poems, comic books, letters, notes, and primary sources are all acceptable forms of accessible texts. Make sure the texts you choose are full of depth. Even children's books can show a level of depth. Next, you should arrange these texts in order of difficulty. Some students will want to read higher-end novels and others will want to read children's picture books. Being able to find what they want to read easily will encourage them to use the library more often. Also be sure to include some sort of checkout system so students know the procedures for checking out text from your classroom library. Most importantly, make the students want to use the classroom library. You can do this by putting a poster or banner over the library to draw attention to it and by making sure the library is always kept neat and in order. Another way to get your students to read more accessible texts is to talk about the text with them. Thomas G. Gunning says that talking about books motivates us to read and deepens our understanding of what we have read. Another way is to develop some sort of class competition. Competition is what drives several students to excel. One more way is to provide students with rewards for reading accessible texts. These shouldn't be anything too big, maybe candy or a pencil, because let's face it, we are teachers. Here's a quick review. We hope you have enjoyed our presentation and hope that you have a better knowledge as to why going beyond the textbook in your classroom is important and how to get started. This has been a production by Chelsea, spelled with an I, West, history teacher, and Troy Myers, math teacher. Thanks and gig 'em.